Oh, yes. Oh, yes. What I missed about college football 2020, maybe more than anything else. In 2020, we had none of the big non-conference games. None of the big non-conference games in 2020 that allow us to see teams that we never get to see play each other meet on the same football field. And hopefully, we are going to get a normal, full college football season in 2021 and enjoy those non-conference matchups that not only allow us to see teams on the same field that we never get to see play, but also then to be able to evaluate those teams and get a better understanding of the better conferences, the better teams, and how they performed against the other conferences. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we all love each and every night with all of you. Appreciate everybody who's joined us in the live chat. Thank you so much for adjusting your schedule. The original time of 6 p.m. Eastern time did not work. We had to move that back to 7:30. I believe I have hooked up the phone lines correctly. I did some tests prior to jumping on here, so I apologize for being a couple minutes late, but I wanted to make sure that the phone calls coming in would properly go through the system and into the earpiece. So thank you so much for that. I've been looking at some point today, I ran through the entire college football schedule for 21, and I listed all the non-conference games that I'm looking to see that I think really will have an impact on the season, are either championship type matchups, will have implications and ramifications toward the college football playoff, or are just interesting matchups or regional matchups that should mean something, should be brought together, that we should see on a more regular basis, like Maryland and West Virginia, for example. All right. Want to remind everyone that you can join us on Patreon. Join us on Patreon. We've got watch parties. Of course, that's for the college football season, I understand, but exclusive live streams as well. We'll have another one coming up here soon. We had one last weekend, exclusive live streams. Also, you get my college football predictions exclusively there. And Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info with his insight into the betting world. And also an insider look at the empire that is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Wink, wink. Okay, it's the insider look nonetheless. All right, we'll dive into live chat here to check out your comments and your non-conference games that you really want to see this year. I've made a bunch of lists. I probably got about 40 games here, but then I picked out my top 10. And maybe I'll produce a video here pretty soon running through the top 10. And then I also like to typically do a under the radar, top non-conference games under the radar. I have a little bit more fun doing that video, actually, than the video with the LSU, Texas, and Oregon, Ohio State kind of matchups. The under the radar best non-conference games of the season. All right, who's in the live chat? Hands for the Razor says in week 1, you got Alabama, Miami, and the Tide's other home field in Atlanta. Ain't that the truth? Pretty much Alabama has set up shop in week 1 in Atlanta. Sometimes it's in Houston. Sometimes it's in Orlando like it was a couple of years ago against Louisville. But pretty much that's the deal pretty much. I'm not getting that through the board. Let's see.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline.
Hello, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
2021.
Mm-hmm. Got all our selections. I've checked all the boxes. Stand by, folks.
September 18th.
Went through all this.
2021. Nebraska versus Oklahoma.
An issue. Got everything turned up. Getting levels on the phone and the Wi-Fi. Yeah, don't know what happened here.
I hope you
My
got that.
apologies on that. I don't know what's going on here. I've done all my checks on why on the phone lines and the audio coming through the board.
September 18th, 2021, Nebraska versus Oklahoma. Full story of the year.
Always interesting
Thanks,
to be
buddy.
troubleshooting on the air. I'm sure this takes away from the broadcast just slightly. Just slightly. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. There's something I must be missing. There's got to be something I'm missing because something's not happening. I'm not hearing any audio off the phone. Did anybody else hear that call come through? You can hear, but I can't hear. Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, you can. Everybody can hear them, but I can't hear them. That's beautiful. I don't know what's going on there. I've got them up here. I got my headset up, my headset volume. Issues. And I'm not the best at troubleshooting. You've kind of picked up on that. It might be where I plugged in my headphone. I had 6 different options. So that might be the problem right there. The only way we're going to know is to have somebody else call in. All right. I'm going to continue through the live chats, and we'll just have to take call by call, and maybe the 5th one might work. We'll see, because I might have to try 6 different. I wouldn't think that it would matter, and I selected that one because it goes along with the one that I've got selected. All right. So again, hands with the razor likes Alabama, Miami. Yeah, Atlanta, Alabama's home field in Atlanta. Penn State fan 24, Ohio State, Oregon last year would have been fun. Yeah, it would have been a little bit more fun, I think, in Autzen Stadium out in Eugene. Now they come back to Columbus, and we'll see what they have planned to make up the game in Eugene. I don't know. Week 2, Big 10, Pac-12, Washington, Michigan at the Big House. And much like the Oregon-Ohio State game, of course, that was supposed to be played on the West Coast in Seattle last year. This year in the Big House in Ann Arbor. And that's a week 2. So whoever is selected as starting quarterback at Michigan, most likely JJ. Well, is it going to be? Yes. Regardless of who's selected starting quarterback at Michigan. Oh boy, this is not sounding right.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
The
Hello,
call will start.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Can you hear me on your earphone?
Okay. Problems. My apologies, everyone.
This is Marty.
Build
Can you
out
hear me
a
on your
staff
earphone?
here. Basically, is what we need. We need a production assistant would be good. A salesperson would be fabulous. That's what we need more than anything. But tonight, a technician, because I don't know. Everything looks like it always does. Everything else is set up as it always is.
You can't hear me, can you?
That might have been the issue. Possibly. We'll see. Because I had
Can
to
you
try
hear
a
me,
different headset
Mark?
jack. Running a professional operation tonight for sure. All right. Hands with the razor with a lot to say early on. Yeah, those are good matchups. Yeah. Auburn, Penn State, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Michigan State, Miami. All right. Week 4. Well, I'll tell you what I've got here. My top selections. Week 1, Georgia, Clemson. Hands down, best game of the year. Best matchup of the year. We'll see if the game comes through. Best matchup of the year, Georgia, Clemson. Boise State and UCF. Louisiana I caught a statistic that Louisiana had more offensive production coming back than any team in the country. Going to Texas. Look out, Steve Sarkisian. Louisiana beat Iowa State last year by 17 points on the road. Going to Texas in week 1. And then Texas has to turn around and go to Arkansas the next week. I like Oregon, Ohio State, of course. My other top 10 selections include Cincinnati with a doubleheader against Indiana and Notre Dame. Indiana, Notre Dame for Cincinnati. Stellar. And Notre Dame is going to have to play Wisconsin the week before Cincinnati. They go to Lambeau Field, or I think they're going to Soldier Field this time around to take on the Badgers. Of course, all the Notre Dame games, I hate to put them in any kind of list because they play all non-conference games. Again, out of the ACC. Liberty and Ole Miss playing late in the season. The reunion of Hugh Freeze. That should be an interesting one. And, of course, then we've got the ACC and the SEC getting together as they always do the final weekend of the season. Again, my apologies for the two folks that called in. Unfortunately, I don't have any way to test before I go on air. And even though we've successfully put this together all these other times, for some reason I'm obviously misstepped somewhere. Don't know where that is, but somewhere. All right. Samson Simpson, good to see you. Aaron Short as well. Buckeye River Rat in the mitten. Yes, we made a reminder of the show at 7:30. Sorry about the switch in times, but could not be avoided. Cincinnati, Indiana. And you got to think, if Cincinnati can handle those two non-conference games against Indiana and Notre Dame, this would be the college football playoff scenario nightmare for the selection committee of all nightmare scenarios, because not only a group of 5 team that could go undefeated, but undefeated against 2 teams that are going to start the season ranked in the top 15 in the country. And so for anybody who's rooting for chaos or rooting for the group of 5 to be respected and acknowledged, root for Cincinnati to win them all, and then root for Indiana and Notre Dame to be good. Can you imagine? This is best case scenario. Indiana wins the Big Ten championship. Indiana goes undefeated in the Big Ten and wins the Big Ten championship with 1 loss to Cincinnati. And Cincinnati's undefeated. And Notre Dame's, let's say, 11-1, 10-2, even 9-3, with a loss to Cincinnati. Kevin, good to see you. Got Matthew on the line and Phil B as well. Mike 3883 says, honestly, Cincinnati may have a more difficult schedule than Georgia. Looking at the schedule, Cincinnati takes on, of course, Notre Dame, Indiana, Navy, and UCF. Okay. I get the point, Mike. Don't think we have to go quite that far. Georgia's got Auburn and Florida, and Tennessee, Kentucky, Vandy, South Carolina, of course, is not exactly a gauntlet, but Georgia also has to play Clemson. Clemson, Florida, Auburn, and then they don't get that cushion of the lower end of the American Conference, but at least worth looking at. Alabama Akron, Mark. Actually, this season, I believe Akron is playing Auburn. Today, we cut a video on Ohio State, Auburn, Oklahoma, and Georgia. So be looking out for those videos coming up. D-Rock Irish, good to see you. Buckeye River Rat, unfortunately, you did not miss much of anything. If anybody else wants to be a brave soul and give me a call, I hope that since all the headset volumes are up, maybe that did it. Even though I just had the one headset volume that I always have up because that's the jack I use. We will see. Yeah, unfortunately, Rod, Georgia Clemson is the standout, and there's really nothing to challenge that. Again, things could change and teams could not be what we expect them to be, but this is college football, and unfortunately, it's very predictable. So Georgia and Clemson will pretty much, we can bet, and win the bet that they will be two of the top 5 teams in the country. Love these Cincinnati matchups. Good for Cincinnati to get out there and play Indiana and Notre Dame. It's great. Alabama did get a big commitment today from 5-star quarterback Ty Simpson from Tennessee, who was also considering Clemson and Tennessee. Ty Simpson, 5-star quarterback, 2022 class, committing to Alabama above Tennessee and also Clemson. Now, imagine if Tennessee would have had a stable situation in place.
Fine. Press 1 to start the
That would have been
will
good
start at the beep.
for their chances. But why would a 5-star quarterback? Oh boy, we got Marty on the line. You may need to hit the solo button on the Bluetooth channel to hear the call in your earpiece, the solo channel.
Hey, Mark, I can hear you.
We'll see. We will see with the next call. Marty's having to keep track of
Hey,
here,
Mark.
and that's unfortunate for him. But my guy Marty is basically
Hey,
responsible
Mark.
for anything that has been done well at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Marty's responsible for it. So Marty got me set up on the soundboard, and maybe I got a little too cocky with the soundboard because I had about 4 successful shows. Then I just thought, I know how to do it. Da, 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 da. And then whatever I forgot last time or the time before, and Marty had to listen in and correct me. Now he's got to correct me on something else, even though I thought I had the list down and I was good to go. Yes, there's the guy right there. This man is truly the man, the myth, and the legend. Marty McPadden, everyone. There's the brains
Hey,
behind
Mark.
the operation. I don't know if he wants to take credit for that right now, but the brains behind the operation. All right. Yeah, we may have to tear things down. If I get one more call and I can't hear, even though I did this, yeah, the earpiece is plugged in. It's right in front of me. If I get one more call and I can't hear, then we will just tear the whole thing down and go the old-fashioned method. We'll do a throwback to 2 Tuesdays ago, which was basically, you know what it was. All right. Mm-hmm. That we will see if that took care of things. Also, some other things are a bit suspicious here, but Marty thinks he's pinpointed it, and we will see. Hopefully. Sorry for the ragged show. Maybe I delete this one after we're done. Oh boy. All right. At least you guys have good times in the live chat. All right. You guys are the show. All right. Here's the test. Oh, I can hear it. It's a good sign.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. Press 1. The call will start at the beep.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Of course, it's me. I'm just testing to make sure you're hooked up right.
Okay. Well, that
All right,
that pretty
talk
much.
to you later.
Yeah. Thanks, Marty.
Bye.
Oh, what a
Press
circus!
1 to start the
What a
call or
circus
2
we
to
get going
decline.
here.
The
The other
call will
thing is
start
when
at
I've got to go through this, I've got to hit the operator asked for me to hit the number 1. I got to hit it like 4 times. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Oh, call dropped. Okay, well that's not good. I had a couple calls coming in, and they dropped. So we are waiting by. You folks are way too
1
patient.
to start the call or 2 to decline.
Mark Rogers
The
TV,
call
the
will
voice of
start
college
at the beep.
football, and professional phone operator, obviously. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Rod. We got through.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right.
Yeah,
Finally, I'm talking to somebody. Yes.
Yeah, so that's pretty much all I'm calling. It's just give you a little test out. So, yeah, we've already talked about future these non-conference games. So, yeah, I'm just giving the call for a test.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Rod. I appreciate it.
All right.
You have a good night. All right. Rod, being a good guy, just calling in to test us. Thank you so much for that. George is here. David is here. Drinks on David. I'll order 3 right out of the gate, David. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's get back to the non-conference games. 860-325-3687. Let me get that up for everyone. 860-325-3687. We don't have to talk about non-conference games in college football. That is only the topic of the night. We seem to do a little bit better when I can set us up with a title and a topic, a storyline for the night. But anything concerning college football is fair game. All right. Georgia Clemson, yes, week 1. LSU UCLA, probably not a good game, but for some reason, the type of matchup I like. Here we go. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's George.
Hey, George, what's going on? You watching this circus?
Yes, I just wanted to mention you had a different call-in number the other night on the Tennessee Roadshow produced channel.
Yes. So here's the deal. That the Tennessee Roadshow produced show, our guy Bobby does a fantastic job, has offered to direct our show on Wednesday night. And so he has provided a different call-in number. Eventually, we're going to move everything over to that call-in number because that's going to work so much better when we put people on hold and they can listen to the show and all that. But until I get access to that site, I'm going to be here. But hopefully that's going to be taken care of very, very soon, like within the next week.
You see the problem, though, right? You're dealing with people that are like drawn in 22 directions, and there's different phone numbers, and
yep, exactly. Totally get that.
So can you give us both of those phone numbers online right now so we can write them both down if we want to call?
I can do that.
2 totally different phone numbers.
Again, right, I don't necessarily know.
That. I do. I have it. It's in my phone book.
So as it stands right now,
Mark.
Yes, George. You still with me, George?
Florida's best non-conference game next year?
Florida. Well, you're playing Florida State. Do you consider that to be any kind of a decent game? That's about as good as you got.
If LSU beat us last year, I'll take that game serious.
Yeah. Florida State. Not exactly what it used to be.
But I after last year's game with LSU, I won't take anything for granted.
I wasn't taking that game for granted before it was played.
Right. What if we throw their shoe 30 yards down the field? I don't know.
I know that LSU was god awful last year, but they're still loaded with talent. They probably have more talent than Florida.
I make jokes about Georgia all the time based on coaching, but I've never made a joke about LSU ever. They are our equals. Alabama is like the first rung of the ladder, and then it's LSU and Florida. You know, like, and maybe even throw Auburn in there if they have a good quarterback.
What is it going to take to bring down Bama?
I don't want to say it all for time. It's going to have to die. We love the guy. It's a love-hate relationship. We like his Geico commercials, but we hate playing against him.
Geico. Is it Geico? No, it's the duck. Saban.
I did that on purpose.
The Geico commercials. I got you.
Yeah.
Dan Mullen needs some kind of commercials. He would be a perfect guy. Half the country would know, more than half the country would know who he is, but he would certainly be the guy that could play the part of that, with the duck there. I think that would be a natural for Dan Mullen.
I can see how he could use it for recruiting. He could enter the recruit's house wearing a Darth Vader mask, saying, "Luke, I am your father." It'll all work out.
It's going to work out for you, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe Dan Mullen will be in the NFL in a few years, and it will all work out. That seems to be what he likes. Yep.
What am I going to do? I'm stuck cheering for a certain team.
You're sticking with your team. I love that.
Yeah. Did you see my comments on your Florida Gator channel thing earlier about Ohio State and Florida?
I did not see anything about Ohio State and Florida, George. Bring me up to date.
There's only so many hours. There's only so many hours in the day. I don't blame you.
What was your comment about Ohio State and Florida?
Well, you compared like 1996.
Oh,
Ohio State and Florida.
I did.
Yeah, I made like 5 very pointed comments.
Okay, I haven't checked those out yet. All right. Yes, 1996 was a Florida. Yeah, Florida 1, Ohio State 2.
And you did a good job. It was the most honorable representation I've ever seen of an analysis of a season. You gave Florida all the credit, and you said they should have won. We were the best.
I said that I had a vote back in 1996, I would have awarded it to, yes, Florida. Yep. Played the best season with the best record in the whole deal. Yep.
It was our 5th consecutive SEC title that year. That's a big deal. Like 5 in a row. Come on.
Yeah, you're right. That was 5 in a row.
Right. And we beat Alabama, like not just by 3 points or something. We boot stomped Alabama in the title game.
Yeah.
It was our first national title ever. We routed Florida State 52-20. My brother still has the beer thing. What do you call this? A stein. He bought a beer stein. It says Florida 52, Florida State 20.
George, we're all about accuracy here. That was 4 consecutive SEC championships for you.
Are you serious?
93, 4, 5, 6. 92, Alabama beat Florida.
All right, listen, you can't usurp this statistic. We scored 612 points that season. Our opponent scored 228. I like that spread.
That doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I was looking through that season and seeing you guys just totally annihilated teams like LSU. LSU was the number 12 team in the country. They went 10-2. You beat them 56-13. You beat Auburn 51-10. Like good teams.
It was the one year. It was the one year we ever got to pretend we were Nebraska or something, right? And actually run over people.
Yeah, it was impressive. It was more impressive than what I remembered. Once I went back and was like, yeah, this
we
team.
We had 3 All-Americans on the team. Hey, listen to this, Mark. This will blow your mind. Bob Stoops was our defensive coordinator, and we ran a 4-3 defense.
Bob Stoops was the Florida defensive coordinator in 96?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
And if I got into the details, it'd be even worse. But just an overview is what I just said to you. It was the team of all teams. Steve Spurrier was in the 7th year. We had Danny Werfel, something Rydell, that other guy, 3 All-Americans. It was all offense, just like last year. We should have won last year, but we fucked up.
Are you trying to come up with Riedel Anthony? Is that who you're thinking of? Riedel Anthony? Yes.
Yeah.
Johnny Rydell?
Yeah. And I Hilliard. 3 All-Americans on one team: Werfel, Hilliard, and Rydell Anthony. It was a good year.
You guys were on fire. Fun and gun.
It's gonna happen again. I think Emory Jones is just the best quarterback in college football. Our quarterback, the Florida Gators.
quarterback's everything. It's all that matters.
All right, George. Anything else?
Yes, name one good team that ever won anything that didn't have the best quarterback. You know, Joe Burrows won for LSU. He was the best quarterback. It's always the best quarterback.
Jake Coker. AJ McCarron.
No, I meant
Greg McElroy.
Well, okay. All right. You got me that time. I'll give you that one.
Josh Heupel.
I know when to surrender.
Okay. There's a few out there.
What do you think about Josh? What do you think about Josh Heupel at Tennessee? Do you think it's going to work?
Well, I'm going to call him Josh Heupel. Do I think it's going to work? I think that they're going to have to give him time. They can't expect much of anything for a few years. He's going to need some time. They've got plenty of money, plenty of resources, decent high school football recruiting in Tennessee. I think he's got everything right there to eventually win. But Tennessee's had a hiring problem for a long time. They haven't hired a decent coach forever.
I agree. I think hiring Josh was a stroke of genius for them. They had to get out of the vortex of bad hours, you know.
What I found kind of strange about that, George, was that Danny White, so he's the new athletic director there at Tennessee, and he came from UCF as well. And he showed up and he said, I don't come with any preconceptions about hiring a coach. The board is blank. We're going to search the country. We're going to look at everyone. We're going out there to get the very best coach. Then a couple of weeks later, he goes down and gets his buddy at UCF. Now, I don't know if he had that already in his head that, I want to bring this guy with me.
Yeah.
Or that's the best we can do. So I'm at least comfortable with this guy. I'm going to go grab him.
Do you know who Tennessee's athletic director is? He's the brother of Florida's basketball coach, and his dad is the athletic director at Duke. These guys don't play. That's the mafia. They'll be fine.
Yeah, they have quite the family work in there, the Whites do.
No shit, huh?
Yeah, they're all over the place. Pretty much the power structure of college football. Yeah.
Exactly. That fixes them. I'm taking their team and giving up the 3 points. And he's our basketball coach. I mean, his brother is. And his dad is Mike Krzyzewski's boss. And his brother, and he's the head. Yeah, it gets insane at some point.
George, here's my connection to Mike White, the basketball coach. So when I was in Mississippi at the CBS station down there, I was a sports director down there for 7 years. Mike White was playing for the Ole Miss basketball team when I was down there. So I used to interview Mike White all the time.
I remember that shit, Mark. I was with you way back. I mean, I wasn't actually there, but you've told the stories. It's incredible. You have a good lineage, man.
I appreciate that.
Can you believe that? Can you believe you've actually spoken to Mike White?
Well, it's not exactly at the top of my list of interviews. And no offense to Mike White, that doesn't say anything about Mike White. I would put up there Brett Favre, Jerry Rice, Steve Spurrier, Gene Stallings, some of those people. Peyton Manning.
They're
at the top of my list of interviews.
You should call Mike White and say, "Hey, it's Mark Rogers. Can I talk to you for a minute?" He'll call you back.
Well, I got to say, I was surprised a couple of years ago. I went to the American Conference football media days, and I hadn't seen Tommy Tuberville for a good 17 or 18 years. And he came right up to me, and I introduced myself. And he said, "What are you talking about, Mark? Don't need to introduce yourself." And I hadn't seen Tommy Tuberville for, like I said, 17 or 18 years. So might remember me. It's possible. I doubt it.
Hey, just for fun, for the Auburn fans, will you tell everybody who Tommy Tuberville is?
Yeah, so Tommy Tuberville coached Ole Miss, Auburn, Texas Tech, but had his most success there at Auburn in the early 2000s. So that for anyone watching that's not aware of Tommy Tuberville, that's who he is. And he's now running for some type of Senate seat in Alabama.
The gloves have come off now. It's bare nut fist fighting now, bare knuckle. He's running for an office. Anyway, I enjoyed his stint at Auburn. I thought he was great.
He was good.
I don't feel like he ever got the respect he deserved.
He should have won a national championship. He had an undefeated season.
Right.
The last SEC team that had an undefeated season that did not get a chance to be a national champion. And Ronan is letting us know that Tommy Tuberville was in fact elected. And you know what, Ronan? Tommy Tuberville and I follow each other on Twitter. So after we not met, but reconnected at the American Conference Media Days a couple of years ago, I think it was his last year at Cincinnati. Yeah, then he went to Cincinnati after Texas Tech. He followed me on Twitter that day. I followed him back. So we've kept in, and I can't believe that I forgot that I wished him congratulations after he won his election there in November. That's right.
Yep.
He's at the State House there in Alabama.
I'm not sure what that means, but it's better than something different, I'm sure. Go Tommy Tuberville.
I didn't think we'd be talking about Mike White and Tommy Tuberville tonight.
It's gotten deep because of the Mike White family. Because they're controlling all of college sports right now.
Hey, George, got another call coming in. I appreciate you calling, man. Have a good night.
Love you, Mark. Bye.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. Press 1 to start the call.
You know, Marty's not going to be around forever for him to keep track of our shows here. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Navy Thomas 8. I'm just back at you finally after everything seems to be working now. After listening to George, I want to throw this into the UCF. I already put the sample up on the board.
I caught it.
The UCF just hired Malzahn, the ex-Auburn head coach.
Sure.
And now he's going to the UCF.
UCF. Do you know how much Auburn is paying Gus Malzahn not to coach? $21 million. That's his buyout. Not bad.
Dude, all I can do is point at UCF is competing with Florida, Miami, Florida State University, and now UCF has become so big solid to hire in Muslim. I mean, they keep going through coaches. There was a talk about Hupel, however you pronounce it.
Josh Heupel. He left UCF and went to Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. So they had to go to somebody else. So, boom, they go bigger than Heupel. And I'm just like, I'm not amazed. Actually, I am amazed, but they never went back to try to get Frost back. So, just wanted to go. I'm just glad this is finally working better now. I had to cut off earlier because your stuff wasn't working well, but now it's working great. So
we are fortunate.
Buddy. Talk to you later.
All right, Tom. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Yeah, so basically for the 55 or so people that are watching right now, I appreciate all of you being on the line, but it's because of the one person watching that we're actually receiving phone calls that everybody can hear, including myself. So that's a good thing. So again, This show is dedicated to Marty. I probably should have dedicated about 8,000 of these to him prior to tonight, but this would be the first official sponsored show dedicated to Marty. All right, all right, all right. What else is going on in the live chat? Cheryl's been lurking. Cheryl, you're allowed. You don't have to come out and talk to everybody all the time, because I know everybody drives you crazy sometimes because you've got to moderate and put up with a lot of things. And I know you enjoy the chat, but it's good to lurk some nights. Just kick back and lurk a little bit. All right. Here's the rundown in non-conference games. This is what I've got of note. Week 1, West Virginia and Maryland. They should play more often. Used to be a rivalry. Alabama, Miami, neutral site game in Atlanta. Georgia, Clemson, the best. That is the top of the line, most important game. Probably going to be the best game with the best athletes on the field. Flat out, most NFL players on a field this year for a non-conference game, for sure. Georgia, Clemson. LSU at UCLA. I just like that matchup for some reason. I just like the SEC going out to the West Coast. When is the last time an SEC team went to the West Coast? I'm thinking it was Georgia and Tennessee went out to UCLA. This is sometime in the early 2000s. Tennessee went out to Oregon. They went out to UCLA. Texas A&M, though. That's right. Texas A&M went to the Rose Bowl and blew that 44-10 lead in week 1. And Josh Rosen, probably at his finest hour as a football player, not just a UCLA Bruin, but as a football player, certainly including the NFL, as UCLA scored 35 straight and won 45-44. Another loss in the demise of Kevin Sumlin at Texas A&M. So that would be the last time the SEC has ventured out to the West Coast. Doesn't happen often, but LSU at UCLA at the Rose Bowl. Boise State UCF, the winner gets the jump as the possible top of a group of 5 team. Stanford at Kansas State, under the radar game there. And again, I mentioned this, Louisiana with the most production of any team coming back on offense goes to Texas. Look out, Horns. Louisiana looking for a Big 12 upset for the second consecutive season in Austin in week 1. Notre Dame at Florida State. They played in South Bend last year, and the Irish won big after getting off to a slow start at the first half. Ole Miss at Louisville should be a decent game there. I love this matchup. Texas, Arkansas, old school Southwest Conference, Texas, Arkansas. They should play more often. North Carolina State goes to Mississippi State. I believe that was a matchup of Dak Prescott's final game at Mississippi State in the either Belk Bowl or Music City Bowl. Dak Prescott's final game at Mississippi State in 2015. Mississippi State blasted NC State. So those two schools get together, the SEC versus the ACC. And I got to say that the SEC and the ACC, I'm sure, get together more than any 2 conferences. Speaking of which, Pitt, Tennessee in Knoxville, week 1. Texas A&M, Colorado. Not necessarily a game I have to see, but somewhat interesting. Texas A&M at Colorado. Appalachian State, Miami. Miami typically does not schedule that tough non-conference, but this year, Alabama, not just Alabama, one of the premier group of 5s, Appalachian State and Michigan State. Miami went to App State a couple of years ago and blasted App State. I believe that was in 2017, I believe. Always have to look out for Iowa State, one of the great rivalries in college football. That's become a competitive series where the Hawkeyes have dominated in the past. Washington at Michigan. We talked about that game being scheduled for Seattle last year. Buffalo at Nebraska. Look out, Huskers. Buffalo minus Jared Patterson going to Lincoln to take on the Huskers, and that is not a give me for Nebraska by any stretch. Oregon, Ohio State, one of the premier matchups. Of course, Tulsa, Oklahoma State, the Golden Hurricane gave Spencer Sanders and company fits last year and actually knocked Spencer Sanders out of the game, and they were up by 9 points in the fourth quarter. Tulsa had a good ball club last year, and Oklahoma State came back in the fourth quarter and won that game. Cal at TCU, I'm sure many of you are hearkening back to that classic Cheez-It Bowl game, that 9-6, 10-7, 12-9, whatever game from 2018. Those are your week 1 matchups. Week 2, UCF at Louisville on a Friday night. I love the Friday games. Northwestern at Duke. They always play. These two teams play more than any other 2 non-conference games that I can think of outside of the ones that are known across the board. USC, Notre Dame, and those ACC, SEC matchups. Duke and Northwestern playing again this year. Miami, Michigan State, Virginia Tech, West Virginia. I like that game. Nice little regional flavor there. Colorado, good for you. The Buffs are playing Minnesota and Texas A&M. That's a tip of the cap to Colorado taking on Minnesota and Texas A&M. Nebraska at Oklahoma, of course. Strike up the memories of Jarvis Redwine and Turner Gill and Keith Jackson, Charles Thompson, Jamil Holloway, Johnny Rogers, Brian Bosworth, Will Shields. All right, Oklahoma State at Boise State. They played last year. They played 2 years ago. Oklahoma State won big at home against Boise. They're going back for the return trip. Auburn at Penn State. Love that game. Auburn at Penn State, week 2. Week 2 also brings us the aforementioned Cincinnati game at Indiana. Stanford at Vanderbilt. Duke, Northwestern, Vanderbilt, Stanford. They should all play. The Academia Bowl. Mississippi State at Memphis. They play quite often. Liberty at Syracuse. Of course, the Flames knocked out the Cuse this past season. Notre Dame, Wisconsin. That's probably in my top 5. That is definitely in my top 5. Notre Dame, Wisconsin. SMU, TCU. The Mustangs won that matchup the last time they played a couple of years ago. Mizzou at BC. Decent little ACC, SEC matchup. Then, of course, Cincinnati, Notre Dame the next week. We talked about that. Notre Dame at Virginia Tech. BYU at Baylor. Baylor, you actually played a decent team. Good for you. USC, Notre Dame. UNC at South Bend to take on the Irish. Of course, Notre Dame went to UNC in a conference matchup last year, won a key game against Sam Howell and company. This time the Tar Heels go to South Bend. Liberty at Ole Miss, the Hugh Freeze Bowl, Notre Dame, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, and then the final weekend, of course, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Kentucky, and South Carolina, Clemson. So my top 10, let's do a little work here. Top 10, number 1's Clemson, Georgia. That's my number 1. My number 2, I'm just going games I would like to see. My number 2, I'm going to go Notre Dame, Wisconsin. Number 3, I'm going to go Ohio State, Oregon, 3. Then I'm going to go Cincinnati, Notre Dame, 4. Oh, yeah. Okay. Number 5, I'm going to go with game number 5. I'm going to go with I'd like to see. I don't know. Throwing down LSU and UCLA. And then number 6, Texas, Arkansas. Then I'm going to go back to Cincinnati, Indiana, number 7. I think that's going to be higher for a lot of people. And then my last 3 on my top 10 are going to be North Carolina, Notre Dame. Too many Notre Dame games. So like USC, Notre Dame, they always play. So I'm not going to put it on the list, even though that should be a good game. And my last 2 games, I'm going to go with Boise and UCF. And how about I'm throwing out Iowa, Iowa State because they always play. I'm going to say I really want to see. I want to see, just for old time's sake, OU, Nebraska. Got some sleep last night, Joseph. Got some sleep. I did sleep. Actually, if you went to Florida State show, at times I will kind of, especially when Jason's talking, I'll drift off for a couple minutes. So I usually catch up with some sleep. If you want to see me sleep, Florida State show, Wednesday nights, typically when Jason's talking, I'll drift off for just a couple minutes. I'll catch up with a little sleep right there. Now everyone can figure out whether I'm joking or not. Navy Thomas, need the whiteboard with all the Big Ten games this year. Just list them all. Just put them up there, just so everyone can see. It is the age of the internet. I think we can all just go online and look at the Big Ten schedule. When am I going to reveal my top 25? Man, I got to get to that. So released in the next few days over on our SEC channel, I looked at a few things, including the Bryce Young competition at quarterback with Paul Tyson. That's possible. It's possible that there could be a little resistance there. The Tua versus Mac, Tagovailoa, Jones comparison. We also looked at the Willie Anderson, Alabama outside linebacker who tore it up, led the SEC in sacks last year. And let's see. I forget the other video now. So just released in the last few days and coming up in the next few days, be looking out for Michigan, Texas A&M, Ohio State, Nebraska, Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Auburn. A lot of good stuff coming up. Nobody likes Dabo. I kind of like Dabo. I'm okay with Dabo. And I've actually posted videos where I am ripping him to shreds for stupid things that he's said. So I'm not stating that he never goes out there and just says ridiculous things and plays woe is me. Does that too often. And I call him out for that. But other than that, I like Dabo. I like Dabo. Dabo's good for college football. Love Dabo. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
MSU #1 fan.
MSU #1 fan. How you doing? I'm doing some push-ups here.
Doing good.
How are you? Oh, you're doing good. Good.
Good.
How's Sparty
Yeah.
going to do this year? You got some big games in the non-conference schedule.
Yep, at Miami, Youngstown State, and Western Kentucky.
All right. Sounds like 2-1 to me.
I think 2-1, maybe 3-0.
Maybe
Never know,
3-0.
Miami.
Sure. You could win that game.
I have an argument for the Florida State guys. If Miami can't beat Michigan State, they're not going to beat North Carolina.
Well, you wouldn't think so.
No.
So, MSU #1 fan, here's my question for you.
Yep.
Realistically, what are you hoping Michigan State does this year? What would be a realistic expectation for their record this year? What would make you feel good about this season?
7-5, 9-3.
You went from 7-5 to 9-3.
Yep.
Okay.
Ohio State's a definite loss. We're not beating Ohio State.
Probably not.
And then you got to think about the Michigan game, but we have a bye week before Michigan.
Okay. What I typically like to see is who you play in the other division. I always like to see those games. Check out those games. Who do you play in the West?
I believe it's going to be Purdue and Northwestern.
Okay.
Two I can think off the top of my head.
Okay. There should be one other game, but okay.
We also play Nebraska out of the West.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, you can be, I think, 2-1 in that scoop. Maybe a loss to Northwestern, but
Okay. Yeah. That sounds like a good goal to have right there.
you have to beat Michigan. Michigan now.
Yeah, you've got that game at
I got
home
a
this year.
Yep. I bet all those Michigan fans remember 2015.
You bet.
Yep.
All right.
My question is
Sure.
if you're a Michigan fan,
Mm-hmm.
when Michigan State plays Ohio State, Michigan fans, who are you rooting for?
Okay. We'll send that out to all the Michigan fans out there. Who do you root for when Sparty and the Buckeyes get together? Okay. We'll see what kind of responses we get. We got a lot of Michigan fans that watch us. So we'll see what we get.
I have a question for Cam Underwood, too, if you don't mind giving him my question.
Could you possibly give that to him directly? I just got to be honest,
Yeah.
MSU #1 fan. If you ask me a question right now, I am not going to remember it 5 days from now. It's just not going to happen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm just being honest. So please,
Yeah.
send us the question or call in or whatever, and send us the question
Okay.
into the live chat.
Okay. Thanks for taking my call, Mark.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yep.
All right. We did have a call coming in, and I will take it once you call back. Yeah, I would like to see Texas A&M and Texas get back together. I think they should play. Yes, Navy Thomas is right there with me on Texas and Arkansas. All right.
The call or two to decline.
Hello, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Unfortunately, the call dropped. George may have had our most meaningful call tonight because he suggested that we get things worked out in terms of the phone numbers, and that's going to light a little fire under me to get that done this weekend to make sure that we've got one call-in number and we stay with that all the time. But as it stands right now, since it runs through Bobby's system on his phone system on Wednesday nights, that's why we've got the alternate other number just on Wednesday nights. But every other show is right there on the ticker, 860-325-3687. All right, everyone, you get to see one non-conference game this year. You only get to see one. I'm picking the obvious. I'm going to watch Clemson and Georgia. I'm going to see the most NFL players. And when I say NFL, some people go crazy and they're like, oh, we don't want this to be the NFL. What's it? I'm just talking about they have the most talented players on the field. That's the matchup that is going to give us the most talent on the field in one game. So that is the game I want to see, even though the loser, as long as it's a close loss, is really not going to hurt themselves. If Clemson loses that game 30-27, and they go on to win the ACC and go undefeated and win all their other games, they're going to drop from number 1 to number 3 or from 2 to 4. It's not going to hurt the loser of that game as long as it's a close, competitive game. All right, let's get these calls coming in here. Since I had it screwed up for the good half hour to start us out. Hello, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
How you doing, Mark Rogers? My name is Jay, and
Hey, Jay.
I'm calling from Texas.
Hey, Jay, what's going on tonight?
Pretty good, really good night. Yeah, I was just calling because I wanted to see. I think one of the biggest matchups that we're going to see is Arkansas versus Texas. I don't know if anyone else has spoken about that tonight, but I'm really looking forward to that matchup. I think that's going to be a huge matchup, telling us what's going to happen with the Steve Sarkisian era, and as well as where is Arkansas is happening, what's going to happen with Arkansas as well.
So do you also like that, Jay, because of nostalgia reasons?
Absolutely. What I'm paying attention to this matchup the most is, I believe, right around the time Texas plays Arkansas, Arkansas has to turn around and play Texas A&M as well. And I mean, I would kill to see Texas play Texas A&M again. But I mean, I'm just a fan, so I'll just take whatever I can get at this point.
Yeah, I love those two teams getting together. I think that's amazing. I think they played one time since they disbanded the Southwest Conference. They played in a Cotton Bowl. I'm trying to think when that was. That was in the early 2000s, I believe. I'm trying to come up with that game in my head.
As far as to Texas versus Arkansas?
Texas, Arkansas. Yeah.
I believe they played the first season Charlie Strong was with Texas. He went to a bowl game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Arkansas.
Yeah, they played in the, I'm sorry, Jay, to cut you off. As soon as you brought that one up, I was like, oh, I forgot that one. Yeah, Brett Bielema and Charlie Strong, 31-6, I believe was the final score. Arkansas won at the Texas Bowl. So that would have been in 2015. Yeah, I forgot about that game. Yeah, and then they also played, I think when Houston Nutt was at Arkansas, I think the Arkansas upset Texas in a Cotton Bowl. I'm going to look that up. I think it was around 2001 or 2, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, I believe they played 03 as well. I believe Vince Young's freshman year.
Oh, okay.
They played. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I've never experienced the old Southwest Conference myself. But I would like to see kind of SMU play, you know, a lot more of the Big 12 teams and some of the SEC teams. I'd like to see Houston, you know, play a little bit bigger schedule, you know, preseason-wise, if we're not going to have an expanded playoff, that is. But I'm just one guy.
Yeah, I remember this game pretty well. As I mentioned, Arkansas upset Texas. It was in the 2000 Cotton Bowl. 27-6. Arkansas was only 7-4, and Texas was a top 15 team, and Arkansas won at 27-6. Yeah, Mac Brown against Houston Nutt. Yep.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good stuff. Well, Jay, who do you root for?
I mean, I root for a number of teams. I'm from Texas.
Okay.
I went to school in Texas, so I generally root for a lot of the Texas teams, but I follow a lot of Texas high school football, which leads you all over the nation when these guys sign letter of intent. And so, of course, I just root for, just a variation of teams, and I look for more or less trends going with the team. And is the team trending upwards or is it trending downward? How are they recruiting? Are they hitting the transfer portal? I just look for the how the head coaches are taking over and changing things and shaping things.
Okay, very cool.
But, it's Texas. It's Texas pride all the way. Any Texas team, whether it be Baylor, Texas A&M, we're going to support Texas.
Very cool. All right, Jay. Anything else?
No, that'll be it. Just enjoy your time. I'm really looking forward to that matchup between Texas and Arkansas. Look forward to you reviewing it when it happens. Thank you so much for taking my call.
We appreciate it, Jay. Have a good night. Always love to hear a new caller. We had Jay from Texas there. Loves Texas football. Involved in Texas high school football. That's very cool. Texas, Arkansas. Yeah, they played in the Cotton Bowl in 2000. But yeah, you got to be pretty old to remember the old Southwest Conference days. Because that league disbanded in 94. I believe it was 94, and Arkansas left a couple of years early. Their first season in the SEC was 92, and that's when South Carolina and Arkansas joined the SEC, and the SEC split into divisions, of which South Carolina has still not won. No. I'm sorry. South Carolina did win the SEC East once, 2010. When they got trucked by Cam Newton in Auburn, 56-17. Yeah. And Arkansas's won the Western Division more times than most people would think. 95, 02, and 06. And they should have won it in 98. That Arkansas team in 98, I was down in Mississippi at the time covering the SEC, and I saw that Arkansas 98 team play quite a few times. And they were the best team in the division, but they lost to Mississippi State. Don't remember much about that game, but they lost the game and lost the division because of that. And they also lost to Tennessee when Clint Sterner fumbled when nobody touched him. He was just pivoting to hand the ball off in the backfield, and he stumbled and knocked the ball out of his hand with his knee. Tennessee recovered, and that saved a national championship season for the Vols. All right. George liked the live stream. He hit the like button. That pretty much means everybody should hit the like button. George did it. Everybody follow in line. D-Rock Irish, he did it. Loves this program. Slams the like button. D-Rock Irish stays with us and likes the program, even though we have technical difficulties at times, and did forever tonight. D-Rock Irish, thank you for staying with us. Eric, yes, had a great conversation with Uncle Lou the other day. That was a whole lot of fun. A lot of people were surprised that Uncle Lou and I got together and thought that had never happened before, which it actually has happened a few times that we've had Uncle Lou on, and I've been on his show as well. All right, you're on with the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Rod again. How you doing, Mark? I'm not violating a rule, am I?
Technically you are, Rod, but since you were just providing support on the helpline there the first time. I think we can let it slide. What's going on?
Yeah, I thought you'd give me a pass. So I just want to talk about a couple of these games, these non-conference games this season. I think they got a lot of interesting factors going in. So one game I'm really intrigued with is the Penn State-Auburn game, because those are two teams every single year, regardless if they have hype or they're expected to be a rebuild or just whatever, you just never know who they're going to be. Also, like for 1 year they're expected to be good and they underachieve, and 1 year they're supposed to be rebuilding, and all of a sudden they're competing for the conference. So I just find that game really intriguing. I think that's a game that's going to really set the tone for each team's season going forward. Now, granted, Penn State has a really tough game with Wisconsin in Week 1, so they may be a little more battle tested to go up against Auburn. But then again, Auburn is still pretty good. I mean, they still got talent. They got some offensive line issues, but they still have a returning starting quarterback. They got some really good players on defense that I like. So that's a really big game that I'm looking forward to. That game's at Penn State, correct?
Yes.
Yes, right. So that's one game that I'm really looking forward to. And then the next one is Michigan and Washington. So I'm really beating my head on who to pick on this one. I was looking at Washington's who they had coming back, and they had a freshman at quarterback last season, correct?
Yes, they did, and I'm not coming up with his name. And this is this is embarrassing right now. I can't come up with his name.
Yeah, hang on, I had it up.
They only played 4 games. Who won the Washington quarterback job?
Dylan Morris.
Yeah.
Dylan Morris.
Sure.
Dylan Morris. Yeah. So, I don't know. That's a game. And then, with Michigan and their quarterback situation, I just feel, they should go ahead and just go with McCarthy. He's got the most upside. They got pretty much a whole new coaching staff. I don't see what can really hurt. They don't have really a lot of expectations to do anything within the Big Ten, at least. So just kind of seeing what your thoughts on those two games were. I'm really conflicted on who to pick on either game. I think there's going to be really good matchups. So just your thoughts on both games.
So when we look at Washington, I'm pulling up the stats right now because I'm trying to get myself refamiliarized with Washington personnel because, man, I just didn't see them play. And as soon as you mentioned Dylan Morris, I remembered that Jacob Sermon was the guy I was more familiar with going into the season and thought that he would win the job. And, of course, Jacob Eason had moved on to the NFL. And I thought Jacob Sermon was going to be the guy in line. He was more touted, highly touted. Dylan Morris, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. Again, Washington only played the 4 games. I saw a handful of plays a few times. Sean McGrew was their leading rusher. And, they before Oregon kind of took over as the top recruiting team in the Pac-12, Chris Peterson had it work in there for a few years and really on the defensive side, especially in the defensive backfield. Now, Elijah Molden was still there last year. And, I think Washington, Michigan, certainly the Wolverines are going to have to get a lot out of that first game in regards to figuring out who they are and what their quarterback can do. And I hope that's going to be McCaffrey. I want to see or McCarthy win the job just because I want to see the most talented guy win the job just so I can see what the ceiling is to see him get out there. But
exactly. That's how I feel. And Steve Dace made a great point. He said, even if the quarterback battle between him and McNamara is even close, even if it's 60-40 in favor of McNamara, I think you should go with McCarthy. Again, he just has the most upside.
Oh, I agree. And fortunately for them, he's on campus right now. He's in spring practice. He's enrolled early. Mm-hmm. So he should really know the offense fairly well for a true freshman by the time they get to that point. What was your other game?
Now, this is something I didn't know. This is something I didn't know, and I didn't learn this until I watched you on the 10-Minute War, that Michigan, none of their defensive recruits enrolled early this year. which is stunning because, they got a new staff. They're trying to, completely change everything. That's going to set them back.
Let me double check on that.
Because they have some.
So I believe I stated defensive backs. I was talking about their pass defense being as poor as it was last year, and that the two things that struck me is that they only signed 2 3-stars. They only signed 2 defensive backs. One, they were both like roughly rated 40th at safety and corner, and they were both just 3 stars, and neither one of them on campus early. I don't think the entire defense, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I must have understood. That was a great piece. Again, by the way, I love those 10-minute wars.
Thank you.
But with McCarthy, I think he should just go ahead and be the guy. And then, there's probably a good shot, if, the quarterback of Washington last year, if they don't, because they have Brock Heward's kid coming in this year, correct?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, that would be really interesting. Again, you got 2 really highly touted, true freshman quarterbacks potentially going head to head. So that would be a really entertaining game to watch, and that could really set the tone for either team. And no one needs to spark more than Michigan and Harbaugh. So they really need to win that game. So the other game I was to get your thoughts on was Penn State Auburn.
Sean Clifford to me has been fairly disappointing. He's not performed well against the better teams. Once they lost, of course, Noah Cain, thinking of Journey Brown, of course, was lost right before the season started. And they still have a bevy of backs in the backfield. And in addition to Noah Cain, I can't think of the other guy that actually turned out to be probably a better back, and he's less heralded. Oh, shoot. His name's escaping me right now. But
yeah, I'm trying to find it right now, too.
Penn State should be. I think that they're going to be solid this year. I think they're not going to contend, although with the Buckeyes having as many just personnel losses and just figuring things out, maybe Penn State can hang with them this year. But I think both of these teams are roughly. I think it's an intriguing matchup because both teams they're good, but they're not going to scare anybody in their league at the top. I don't expect either one of them to seriously contend for the conference championship. I think they're both 8-4 kind of teams, and I think it should be a very close matchup. And it's funny you bring it up.
Was the running back? Sorry to cut you off. Was it Devin Ford?
No, it wasn't Devin Ford. Devin Ford and Noah Cain were both top 5 running backs coming out of high school.
Oh, Kayvon Lee.
Yes.
Kayvon
Lee. Yes. Yep. Because I was surprised that once Journey Brown knocked out just a few days before the season, and then Noah Cain got hurt in the Indiana game, like in the first series, that this Kayvon Lee came out of nowhere, and he was getting a ton of carries. But yeah, that's who I was thinking of there. It's funny.
He averaged almost 5 yards a carry last year.
Okay. Yeah.
He averaged almost 5 yards a carry last year.
Yeah. So
you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. I cut out on my end.
So we talked a little Auburn football this afternoon and recorded that, and we kind of agreed that would be an interesting barometer before they go into SEC play. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're always talented. Auburn is. One thing I always noticed about Auburn too is they always have those really speedy, quirky guys on offense. Those really elusive types of guys, those under-recruited guys you don't really hear of, and they're really good at making those guys productive, and they always have strong defensive players. It seems like they're real represented in the NFL on their defensive side. I love Derek Brown when he was there. So so I really love that matchup. So again, those are just 2 teams you just never know what to expect. Because you may think they're going to be going in one direction to improve, and then they fall on their face, or vice versa. So that's why I'm really intrigued by that game. I think it's going to be a really fun game, and I'm really glad that game's going to be played on a campus too, and not a neutral site. So, yeah. But Mark, yeah, those were my top 2 games. Well, not my top 2 games, but I just found those games really interesting. Obviously, Georgia Clemson is the big one. I'm a little disappointed that Oregon's quarterback transferred. Did he pick Texas Tech?
Yes,
that
he
where
went
he
to Texas Tech.
transferred to?
Tyler Shook. Yes.
Yeah, which baffles me, but whatever. I'm sure he had his reasons. So, but I think that hurt the Ohio State Oregon game as far as interest. Now, as a Buckeye fan, obviously it makes this a little easier game for us. But I was looking forward to a little tougher of a game. So, but I'm really excited for this season. I'm just really looking forward to getting these games played, and it's going to be a long off season talking about them.
No doubt. It always is, but especially this year.
Yep. All right, Mark. Well, I'll talk to you soon, and take care.
Appreciate it, Rod. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I like the fact that a top SEC team is coming to Big Ten country. I'm almost positive that the last time that happened was when Alabama visited Happy Valley. That would have been in 2011.
To start the call or
Alabama and Penn State played a
call
home
will
and
start
home
at
in
the beep.
2011 and 12, or 10 and 11. That's the last time that I believe, and I'm going to take out the LSU game at Lambeau Field against Wisconsin, that the last time the SEC was on campus at a Big Ten stadium. Missouri, Purdue played a couple years ago. That's right. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Kevin, Dallas, Georgia. How you doing this evening, Mark?
Hey, Kevin. What's going on?
Nothing much. Just two games. One is out of conference. The other one is as far as in conference. It's that cross conference time of the year. Well, yeah, time of the year again. As far as two Alabama games. One is opening up with Miami, and then as far as the cross conference, as far as Florida, I guess it's about maybe the first time we played Florida during the regular season about 100, 200 years, but who's counting. As far as the Miami game is concerned, I'm looking at it initially. Before all the changes, I was looking at it as a glorified scrimmage, honestly. But then after the changes, I look at it as being, it may wind up being back to the future, Mark, in the respect that the last time that Alabama was in this situation when it comes to their quarterback, you had Jalen Hurts being, the third or the fourth string quarterback going into the game. Then was all said and done, he wound up running three quarterbacks out of there. So I don't know that it's going to be the case as in three quarterbacks leaving, but it's more so as in, say, for instance, if Bryce Young don't produce initially, and then, hey, the pitchforks and the doggone torches are going to be out to get Paul Tyson in there.
Yeah, that was the year they played USC in the opener and crushed them. That who started that game for Alabama? Shoot, I'm not coming up with that. Wasn't Blake Barnett?
The guy who was the Tate Martell of Alabama. And that's Blake Barnett.
Yeah, I just said his name. That's right, Blake Barnett. Yeah, I was surprised I spit that out. I thought it was they had a three-way. That of course was the year after Jake Coker left in 2016, and Jalen Hurts took it over, and they came within a whisper of a national championship.
Yes, sir. So it's and plus, I mean, it's going to be a lot of as far as a lot of talent as far as on the offensive side, as far as getting them acclimated to quote the process. So, and I look at it as being interesting even on the Miami side, because I feel that as far as the University of Miami, if Manny Diaz is the coach, and the coach of the not only just the present but the future, is that these next two recruiting classes are going to be pretty much make or break. Because when it comes to South Florida, and it's not just as far as on the South Florida side, but more so on the national side, when it comes to the 2022 class as far as on the D line, they have probably about maybe 10 to a dozen of the top D linemen in the nation. So it's going to be interesting as far as to see what transpires as far as the University of Miami this season, as far as keeping guys home. Because if not, then hey, as usual, everyone is going to come in and pretty much pick to the bone as far as getting the best D lineman as far as South Florida. And in reference to the University of Florida, along those lines, I don't know what direction they're going in, Mark, because it's because the one thing I've heard about Mullen is that Mullen don't like to recruit. So how in the world can you be a head coach and you don't like to recruit?
I've heard the same thing, and when people say that he doesn't like to recruit, I'm thinking that what they probably more or less mean is that he just doesn't have a burning desire to just beat the pavement and be a just ruthless out there. And when I say ruthless, I don't mean unethical, but Urban Meyer comes to mind because he was a relentless recruiter. You have to be just tireless. You just have to enjoy the grind of talking to a million people, just in hot pursuit constantly. It's a grind to recruit and recruit well. And he probably, his staff probably works hard and they probably put in the hours, but in terms of, you just have to be relentless. And I don't believe that he's got it in him.
That being the case, Mark, would it be in his best interest? Okay, I don't have that burning desire as far as to beat the pavement, get on the plane, hit the highway, et cetera, as far as getting these young men. But why don't you get, the analysts that are willing to do it? Why don't you get the coaches that are willing to do it? And you just, you can do all your quirkiness as far as the press conference and live happily ever after. Because just on the outside looking in, it just appeared that it showed not as far as an SEC championship game, but more so as in the bowl game. Stating that it was a glorified scrimmage and we had our scout team players playing. I mean, I would think as a fan, I would kind of look at him side-eyed. And I would think that people as far as that don't even have a connection with the SEC would do the same. So it just kind of just blows me away as far as you putting all the pieces together, Mark, as in, okay, on one hand, when it comes to games that does not quote the SEC championship or a Final Four game, that I don't have an interest in it as a coach. It's one thing for the players to have that mindset, but it's something totally different for a coach to not only have that mindset, but to verbalize it.
Yeah, we've had this conversation a few times, and that is just not the high road to take as a coach. Basically, anytime your team is scheduled to play a game, regardless of injuries, regardless of opt-outs, you have to show up and you have to coach your team to the best of your ability and inspire them to fight tooth and nail, even if they know that they're undermanned and that it's going to be a difficult challenge and their best people aren't there, that you have to show up and play in that vein. And I compare what happened with Florida and their approach to the Cotton Bowl versus what North Carolina did against Texas A&M in the Orange Bowl. North Carolina was missing two of the best backs in the country, Devontae Williams and Michael Carter, two of the just phenomenal backs in the country, missing both of them, missing their two best wide receivers, missing their best defensive player by far, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, Chaz Surratt. They didn't make any excuses. They just went down there and they played Texas A&M to a 34-27 game with about a minute left. They played them to a one-score. I know that Texas A&M scored with like 10 seconds left, but basically they led the game in the fourth quarter. They went down there and they fought hard. And you go away from that game as a college football observer, a media person, whomever you are, and you at least know that they lost the game, but you've got respect for them that they showed up and know that they were compromised in terms of personnel losses, but they still showed up and they still fought and validated themselves. The way Dan Mullen coached, and he admitted to this both before and after the game, he basically threw in the towel and treated it like a scrimmage. And then that's what happened. People would have understood had Florida shown up and lost to Oklahoma by a couple touchdowns with all their personnel losses. People would have been like, okay, at least they showed up and they fought and they played hard. And we don't know who the better team is because Florida didn't have their best players, but they didn't lose by 35 points. It was an embarrassment.
That is true. That is true. What's the old saying? We can forget but not forgive, or vice versa. And I think that's what's going to happen as far as that Florida base. And one question, Mark, and I've just mulling it around as far as over the past week or two, and that is, when I look at all the coaching jobs in the SEC, and my question to you, I can only find that there would be only two bad jobs as far as SEC. And I thought that all of them, to a degree, if you want to look at that medium, once you get past those two, what I would call purgatory would be at best as far as those two jobs I'm talking about, but that tier above those would be jobs in which I think that you could win within 3 to 4 years on average of, say, maybe 8 plus 1, as in 8 regular season games plus your bowl games. Then as far as you have your Alabama, your LSU, your Georgia, Florida, Auburn. But as far as the 2 bad jobs, when I look at as far as the SEC, that you'd have to hold my entire family hostage for me to take the jobs, and I would still have to just wonder how much I love my family, and that would be Vanderbilt and Missouri.
Bam. Okay. I thought you were going to have me guess, and I wanted to see if we were thinking along the same lines. So I had the same 2. And these are the reasons why for me. Vandy's obvious. We don't even have to get into Vandy. What James Franklin did there for 2 years was pretty remarkable. And he also caught the SEC East at exactly the right time. But still, it was remarkable going 9-4, 9-4, and 5-3, 5-3 in the conference 2 consecutive years, because otherwise Vandy is just, they don't put the money, the resources, the facility, the time, the attention. For a football program to be successful, you've got to have buy-in from the very top of the institution, and there has to be an understanding that football is important. This means a lot to us, and we are going to win. And then everybody needs to be on the same page. And Vanderbilt just doesn't have that. And they've got the academic considerations. The thing about Missouri, to me, Kevin, is that they're in a bad spot when it comes to recruiting, and recruiting against teams that are sitting in the Southeast with all that talent. And Missouri's kind of lost out there, as they're really not in the they're in the SEC. They're a full-fledged member, but they're not viewed in that way. Texas A&M is in a different place because they're sitting in the middle of Texas, and they've got just a much more advantageous situation. But yeah, Missouri is when you look at what Gary Pinkel did there, both before and after entry into the SEC, it's pretty remarkable, because his recruiting classes were not anything higher than 45 or 50 in the country, and he was able to put together some good teams. It's just difficult to bring players there, and they don't have them there.
That is true. That is true. And along those lines, Mark, I was just going to ask you, because you have a better feel for the SEC, for the Big Ten than I do. And other than Ohio State and maybe 2 other schools, is there an investment in football even half as much as Ohio State?
You said other than Penn State.
Well, other than Ohio State, that's what I meant. Other than Ohio State,
and
maybe a couple of others. And I'm kind of reaching and that's the reason why I'm not saying specific to another 2 schools, because I'm more so Ohio State and maybe a couple other schools that are invested half as much as Ohio State in football.
I think Nebraska is, despite it not showing on the field and in the results. That program is invested in winning. They spend a ton of money. The place is packed. They have a rabid fan base. They provide resources to football. Yeah, they really want to win at Nebraska. I would say Nebraska is probably the second most committed, and that would be a surprise to some people, because they would think, oh, Penn State and Wisconsin and maybe used to be Michigan. But Nebraska, they invest in football.
And the reason why I asked that, Mark, and after this, I'm gonna shut it down. And it's just that in order to be successful, it has to be an investment in it. And I hate to. I'll say this, and I say it proudly. And that is, you have to have an SEC mentality in order to compete with Ohio State. You can't have it's nice that we win 7 games for the next 10 years. That's 70 games. And that's it. You have to have a mentality of having the disease of more. You can't just be satisfied with 7 wins plus 1. You have to have that mentality. Okay, hey, maybe the first year or 2 we win, say 14 games, but then after that, hey, we're gonna have to kick the doggone door down. So, and I just don't. Other than Ohio State, I really don't see that as in the other Big Ten schools, and that's the reason why I had to ask you that. And hey, you pretty much at the same mindset. So.
Well, the one guy that I hear talk like that, talk like a champion, talk like winning championships is the only goal, and otherwise we're failing, is James Franklin. He does talk like that. He does talk about after losing to Ohio State, they're the gold standard in the conference. They're the elite. We're trying to get there. That's our goal. That's our aim, is to knock them down. When I hear somebody like Kirk Ferentz at Iowa, and I've got a ton of respect for him because he built Iowa into a very good football team. And I was just going through the rankings the other day under his tenure because I was going through comparisons of rankings across the Big Ten and the SEC. You know, he's had a highly successful career at Iowa, and it's not a easy place to win. They don't have a ton of players in the surrounding states at Iowa, so it's not an easy place to. So he's a really, really good football coach, and he's got NFL experience, and he brought that to Iowa, and they churn out NFL offensive linemen and tight ends and front seven on defense. But when he talks, it just doesn't seem like he has a. And again, I want to be careful here because we're talking about a guy that gets paid a lot of money, that runs a top flight football program, that churns out NFL players, that goes 9-3, 8-4 most seasons, and has won Orange Bowls and Rose Bowls and all the things that he's done. But it just doesn't sound like he has an anticipation each year when I listen to him talk that we're going to go win a championship. He's just kind of like, we're going to do our best. We'll see what happens kind of thing.
Would it be safe to say that he's the Big 12 version, the Big 10 version of Cale Gundy?
Mike Gundy?
Mike Gundy.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that. Yeah, to a certain, from that standpoint, yes.
So that means, other than doing something that's just irrehensible, he's going to stay there until they put him in a pine box in both cases.
Yeah, he could go 8-4 forever at Iowa, and nobody's going to make a move. No, that's now John Cooper went 8-4 his last year at Ohio State, and he got fired. Just a different deal.
Oh, indeed. Again, as always, pleasure speaking with you, Mark. Take care, and hey, look forward to speaking with you soon.
Appreciate it, Kevin. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? We're talking non-conference games, so we're talking about anything you'd like to in the world of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's DeAndre. How you doing tonight?
Hey, DeAndre. I'm doing well. What's going on?
Good. I got two quick questions, and one is about the three. Alabama's going to be one of them. But two of them about Alabama, and one is going to be about Nebraska football. Okay. What was the difference in between, I think it was 2018 and the 2020 team that Alabama put on the field this year? Because when we saw the 2018 team that Clemson beat 44-16, that was considered to be one of the best teams of all time that Clemson beat. Everybody was talking about it. It's out there. Everybody saying it's the best team we ever seen. So what was the difference? Because that team seemed like it was more talented than the 2020 team. Am I looking at it the wrong way, or what was the difference?
That is a great question, because I'm racking my brain going through position units, trying to find some kind of weakness. Nobody anticipated what we saw in the national championship game in 2018. Everybody expected either Alabama to win or it to be a great game. And so, like you say, that going into that game, everything we saw up till that point at 14-0, Alabama was a complete team with a great quarterback, with stellar receivers that are now tearing it up in the NFL.
Jacobs, that running back.
Sure, Jacobs, a running back. Yep.
This Harris, both of the Harris guys. So I just want to know, what do you think the difference was?
Now, coming down the stretch in 2017, they had some defensive issues, but in 2018, that team shut out LSU. That was an LSU team that finished number 6 in the country with Joe Burrow at quarterback. They shut them out, held them to about 125 yards of total offense.
But that team was, I know that the offensive coordinator was saying, but they did bring in Brady to upgrade what they were trying to
Sure,
do. So the
sure.
philosophy
Yeah,
was a little bit different.
I'm not comparing. I'm not selling that LSU team as the one that we saw the next year. But I'm saying, who else in the country is shutting that LSU team out? They finished number 6 in the country. They won the Fiesta Bowl. They were loaded with talent, and Alabama shut them out. This Alabama team got ripped up pretty well by Florida and Ole Miss. So this Alabama team did not look as good as that Alabama team going into the playoffs.
Right.
I don't have an answer for you. Maybe an Alabama person does, because
Okay.
I'm going through the units and I'm trying to figure out there being any kind of distinction between those two teams, and I'm not coming up with it.
Okay. Second question. Everybody's talking about the kid that's gone from Tennessee, 5-star quarterback.
Yep.
I want to say his name is Simpson.
Simpson. Yep.
But, yeah. Pretty much everybody thinks 2 is a bust. Not a lot of people are high on Matt Jones. Why do you think that he chose Alabama over Clemson? Because obviously that Clemson has probably, I'm not going to say the best quarterback, but at least top 5 that came out of there. And it looks like Lawrence and DJ is going to be pretty high draft picks. I mean, DJ got to do it for a whole year. But why do you think that he decided to go to Clemson over Alabama? I know you don't know him personally, but I'm just saying, as far as if you're the offensive lineman, I'd say go to Alabama over Clemson, because Alabama was a pretty good offensive lineman or in the NFL. So, the quarterback, I would give the edge to Clemson so far.
Well, I'm going to give the edge to Clemson since 2014. Yeah. I might give a pretty decided advantage, though, to the Alabama offensive line. So maybe he's looking at where he's going to play behind a better offensive line. Maybe he's playing, based on our discussion last night and based on what I know of Clemson and what they're going to throw in the field at wide receiver this year, I think they're going to bounce back after having a couple substandard years at wide receiver, while Alabama was prolific, like all-time great at wide receiver the last 3 or 4 years. But you never know in terms of beyond just evaluating how good you're going to be. See, I would think that quarterback's a little bit different than all the other positions. At all the other positions, if I was evaluating Clemson versus Alabama, I would not be making any kind of judgment as to one program being better than the other at any given position to say, oh, I've got a better chance of being developed as a defensive lineman at Clemson to go to the NFL than I do Alabama. Well, they're all just churning out. They're both just churning out NFL players all over the place. But to your point, quarterback's a little bit different, and Clemson does have a better track record. We think we've only seen one go to the NFL and perform. We're waiting on Trevor Lawrence, of course. But I think it would go down to a lot of other factors, just in terms of the relationships that were built between Simpson and the position coach and the head coach.
Right. I'll go with that. And then I'll end it with this. So in the 80s, I heard y'all talk about Nebraska putting as much emphasis in football as Ohio State. Now, we're not going to get into social issues. But my question is this. In the 80s, didn't the NCAA control who was on TV at that time? Like when Clemson got put on probation, I think they were still like 9-1 and could have won the ACC 9-1-1. Didn't the NCAA control who was on TV at that time? Because I think Nebraska was one of those programs that was always on TV.
Yeah, the NCAA controlled who was on TV and how many times you could be on TV. I think at some point in the 70s, it was only 3 times, and then they raised it to 5 and then to 7. And then at some point in the late 80s, the dam broke and they just let everybody be on TV as much as the TV networks wanted to show them. But yeah, I know that it was at 3.
That calls there, right?
Yes. Georgia and Oklahoma, I remember being at the forefront of that.
Right. And the reason why I asked that, because a lot of times stuff that I have read and seen, the cause of Nebraska's downfall is because they had the lack of because there's more TV exposure, like DePaul in basketball. If you look back in the 80s, DePaul was always on TV because I didn't have a contract with NBC. And then when everybody started being on TV from regular, you notice DePaul basketball went away. So I wonder, is that the same effect that Nebraska has had? And again, we're going to look at, like, why should I go all the way to Nebraska and play, and I can stay down south and play right down the street from my family, and it's not that far? So I was just wondering, did that have something to do with it? Do you think it has something to do with it?
If I'm a top-notch athlete and if I'm going to a school for all the reasons that we would assume that most of them are going, and choosing a particular school, which means I can win championships, I can go to the NFL, I like my coaches, I like the campus, I like the location, I like the weather, whatever else I like the major that they offer me that I'm interested in, that there would be no reason, yes, that you would run off to Nebraska if you're a kid from Georgia or Florida, unless you're down the list. If you're the 40th or 50th or 60th player, and this is what we see going to Nebraska, then maybe instead of playing at South Florida, where you're going to be a little bit hidden, not that you can't go to the NFL from South Florida because there are South Florida players in the NFL, but it's more difficult, and you want to play on a big stage in college, then you may have to go to Nebraska or to Iowa or somewhere else to play big-time football. Those are the kind of kids that we see. Typically, we don't see the top 10 players in the state of Florida going to Nebraska or Minnesota. We see them get the 60th and 70th guys.
Right. I agree with you on that point, but like I said, I mean, there's more options nowadays. I mean, there was New England, one of their safeties came from Lenore Ron, which is a two-A school. The guy that played center for Tom Brady came from a 3A school, and we see that more frequently now. And like I said, I don't know how much, like Campbell University, they have a football team a couple of years ago, but you can see Campbell, Old Dominion, and whoever else on TV nowadays. I mean, it's just everywhere. Everybody's being seen. If you're good, they're gonna find you. Like the right tackle for the Texans came out of Alabama A&M. They're going to find you if you're good. And even back then, we had this discussion all the time. The best NFL players were coming out of HBCUs. And don't get me wrong, I know they were coming out of Nebraska too, but I mean, they're going to find you if you can play.
Sure.
They still looking for that. I think it was Lance Stallworth. They still looking for his takes on Pittsburgh. He had the takes from everybody else. Well, Mark, I'll let you go. Let everybody else talk, man. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, DeAndre. Appreciate it. Have a good night. John Stallworth, I believe, Alabama A&M. Alabama State, right. Alabama A&M. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, DeAndre.
Have a great night, Mark.
You too. Oh, I'm going to get this call. Think we caught it.
Press 1 to the call.
It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
The man that gives college football its voice, Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
David, I'm good. What's going on tonight?
Well, I was wishing you were starting a little bit later, but I know the schedule. I just got done with my workout, so I had to give you a call.
Cool. We'll take it. What's on your mind?
So there you go. Yeah. Late night, I guess. I wanted to give you a call. So your topic was, kind of the best non-conference games of 2021, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The three games that obviously the number one game I think goes without saying is Georgia-Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the game everybody is circling. And by the way, I'm on record. I think I mentioned this to you before. My 4 playoff teams this year, just to show that I'm not biased either, by the way, is a repeat of 2017, which is Clemson, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Georgia.
Okay.
I think Georgia can lose this game, but I think their margin for error after that is nil. I think they almost are in a run the table type situation. Now, I will say this, in looking at their schedule, and you were talking about this with Lou the other day, the schedule kind of is not the toughest SEC schedule after that when you think about who they've got up until they would get to Atlanta for the SEC championship game, wouldn't you say?
You think that if Georgia loses to Clemson, loses a regular season game, and wins the SEC championship, that they will not get to the playoff?
I think that they could still. Now, that depends. Well, here's the tough thing. I mean, usually the SEC champion's always going to get in, is basically what you're saying, Mark, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's a two-loss SEC champion, as seen by, Auburn in 2017 would have gotten in had they beaten Georgia for the second time. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Here's what I think, though. My point was I think Georgia's schedule, though, after Clemson is not the typical rigorous SEC schedule. Because I think Auburn next year, I think Florida next year, obviously they don't get Alabama again on the crossover. So they would avoid them until Atlanta in the championship game. And I don't think that they have Texas A&M on the crossover, do they?
No, they just played A&M 2 years ago.
Okay. So they don't get Texas A&M. They do, but I believe, get LSU, correct?
No, Georgia plays Auburn. Let me see here. I'm calling up their schedule right now. They might have LSU. If they do, then that obviously changes things.
Well, that would be interesting because they didn't play LSU. Well, they played LSU in the championship game, but they obviously didn't play them as part of their regular season schedule in 2019. They played them in 2018 and then lost at LSU. I remember that game.
Oh, that's right. So they shouldn't be playing them this year. I'm going to find it here in a second.
Right. But, I mean, just bottom line, Mark, I mean, I think that, I don't know what your expectations this year for Auburn or for Florida or for some of these other teams on their schedule, but I just don't know if this is a typical Auburn, Florida, and then if they don't get LSU and they don't get Texas A&M and they don't get Alabama, until they get to Atlanta, that's not the daunting schedule that, one might think of an SEC team.
Sure. And I think it all depends, not all depends, but I think there's a big factor in there in how they lose to Clemson.
Right. That's true. If it's a, one possession or less football game, that's obviously going to look a lot better than if they go in there and they just get routed, of course.
Yeah.
Are you seeing what
Sure.
they've got?
I am trying, that's for sure. My monitor's asleep and it's not helping me out at all. So,
okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the other matchup is.
But I think they could get to Atlanta with one loss, is what I'm saying, Mark. And then basically be in a situation that they were in 18 and in 19, where Atlanta basically becomes a quarterfinal game for them, then a play-in game. So I think that they're still well positioned for their season to basically come down and be a one-game season like it was in 18 and 19 is basically what I'm thinking.
Sure.
So I really like Clemson this year. I think they're going to be very good with the starters they've got back on defense. I think they got 10 or 11 starters back coming on defense, Clemson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Clemson is pretty well stacked. Yep.
Okay. So I think they're going to be good on defense. I think that quarterback looks really good. I think they're going to be tough. So they're right there. I like Oklahoma again, quarterback situation, what they've got coming back on defense. Alabama, I just think reload. So those are my 4 teams. The other thing, by the way, the other conference games I wanted to get to, I don't know if you've touched on these already, are the 3 Big Ten non-conference matchups, which is Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Washington, and then Auburn, Penn State. Which game intrigues you the most?
Actually, Notre Dame and Wisconsin intrigues me the most out of all the Big Ten matchups. But out of those,
that's right.
I always like to watch the SEC and the Big Ten get together. So Penn State and Auburn, I don't think, though, that's going to be an important game. I think the most important game's Ohio State and Oregon. I think, the Pac-12 could ride on that game, and Ohio State, obviously, if they lose that and then they trip up in the Big Ten, they're going to be toast, most likely. So I think that's the most important game, but I want to see Penn State and Auburn get together. But my number one game would be Wisconsin, Notre Dame. Just if you said, who do you want to see play football tomorrow out of all those Big Ten games, I would go with the Badgers and the Irish.
Is that at Lambeau, Mark?
That's something else I'd have to look up, but I think that even though it was scheduled for Lambeau last year, they were going to play a 2-game series, and I think they're playing at Soldier Field this year, I believe.
Oh, okay. That would be interesting. Either Lambeau or Soldier Field would be a good spot for that game. I have to agree with you. I think Wisconsin, Notre Dame is probably interesting. Although I will say this, Washington and Michigan and then Penn State, Auburn could be interesting games for both of those teams to see how good they are maybe early in the season. I'm not saying Washington, Auburn are going to be great teams, but if Penn State and Michigan both lose both of those games, that may foresee a very, very tough season ahead for both teams. What do you think?
Yeah, from a record standpoint, in terms of what we're used to, Penn State and Auburn putting together. If you look at, I looked at Auburn's schedule today, and after Penn State, they've got to win Georgia State, and then they've got Georgia and LSU back to back. So they could be looking at 3 losses in a hurry. They're going to be like 3-3 at that point. So yeah, it could be rough for Auburn, and Penn State don't really know off the top of my head what their schedule is, but they would have already played Wisconsin on the road to open the Big Ten schedule. So that could be a second loss for them early. Right.
I know Michigan's schedule gets tougher into the Big Ten this year.
Yeah.
Which, is going to be interesting. I think, first of all, I think it's, we talked about this before, this is a big year. We obviously know it's a big year for Harbaugh because this is make or break, obviously. But I think this is a big year for Franklin. I mean, he had 3 good seasons. What was it? 3 11-win seasons in 4 years, if I'm not mistaken, in 16, 17, and 19. Correct?
Yep.
Okay. I think, the natives are going to get real restless if he has a 6-6, 7-5 type year this year. Wouldn't you say?
I would think so. That would not be enough for me to let him go, but I would expect any fan base at the level of Penn State is not going to be happy with their head coach going 7-5 or 6-6 at any point, especially following the season that they endured. And just to confirm your point on Georgia, I pretty much had to crawl under the table and unplug the monitor and plug it back in. I don't know why it wasn't waking up for me. Anyway, the other non-division game for Georgia is against Arkansas. So, yes, their schedule, when you break it down, is not a difficult SEC schedule. South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, bye week before Florida, Missouri, Tennessee. That's their SEC schedule.
Right. No, I was talking about this with Lou. I said, who can afford to lose this game more? And he had said that, he did not think that they had necessarily a daunting schedule after Clemson. And I think you just backed it up with, breaking it down there. I do want to make a quick note about the Ohio State-Oregon game. Mark, had you heard? I heard on Dave's podcast that Oregon's quarterback hit the transfer portal. Is that true?
Yeah, he
Can you
went to
confirm
Texas
that?
Tech. Tyler Shook went
Okay.
to Texas Tech. Yep.
Okay. So that's going to be the. By the way, we are undefeated all time against Oregon. We were 8-0 all time, if I'm not mistaken,
That sounds about right.
against Oregon, Ohio.
Yeah.
So I will say this. To me, the interesting thing about that game will obviously be the quarterback matchup. You know, with their situation, obviously, I'm leaning towards, I know your Buckeye people are talking about C.J. Stroud. I think it's going to be Stroud, too, if I had to put my money on who the Buckeyes starting quarterback is going to be next year. I know that Miller and I know McCord were high recruits. I think Stroud, too. I was kind of just in the limited action and what I saw, you know, the one touchdown he had against Michigan State, his mobility did look pretty good. So I think that's a huge factor. But, you know, this is a year to definitely watch the spring game, as I mentioned to you before. And I'm not saying that that's the be-all, end-all, but that's just going to be interesting to see how those guys perform there. And I think early on also to see how much better the back seven of that Ohio State defense is going to be next year is going to be really interesting to watch. So, I mean, I'm still confident, you know, that they're going to win that game. I would have loved to have seen that game last year in Eugene, wouldn't you, Mark?
Yeah, that would have been a fun atmosphere for as good as the setting's going to be this year, just because Ohio State is going to be a decided favorite. Nothing overwhelming, but a decided favorite to see that team that was coming off the Clemson loss, that was loaded going out to, and this is, of course, way before anyone thought of a pandemic and what that was going to do to the season. But yeah, thinking about the Buckeyes heading out to take on a team that was coming off a Rose Bowl win was exciting. Yeah, in that atmosphere, that was going to be a night game, Autzen Stadium with the atmosphere. Yeah, as a real challenge for one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the country. Yep.
Hey, along those lines, Mark, since you opened it up, you think they make that a night game in Columbus this year? What do you think?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah. Get Fowler and Herb Street there for a night game on ABC.
I'm trying to think of how the contracts go in regards to the Big Ten non-conference games. So I don't know if that goes into the selection process as well. So, for example, Fox has the priority on the TV rights against ABC/ESPN. So ever since Fox got into the mix with the Big Ten, as you've noticed, let's see, 2017 was the first Ohio State-Michigan Fox game. And that's because they took over the contract and they had the number 1 selection. So then they pick that, and then ABC and ESPN go next, and they may say Michigan, Penn State, and then, or they may say Ohio State and Penn State, and then they go back and forth. But I'm trying to figure out what the pattern is with the non-conference games. Who have the Buckeyes played in recent years? So that Oklahoma game, for example, in 2017, that was an ABC game.
Yep. But 16, Mark, it was on Fox.
True.
The game in Norman was on Fox. So that was, So yeah, that was different the way they kind of flipped that around both of those years.
Yeah, so I don't know how that shakes out in terms of those big non-conference games.
Hey, Mark, one quick point. You know, do you remember how long did CBS do the Ohio State-Michigan game? Was it like 4 or 5 years in a row?
CBS did the Ohio State-Michigan game from 82 until through 86, 5 years in a row.
That's right. Yeah, my first game I watched was unfortunately Matt France and some jerk quarterback that made a guarantee for the win in Columbus.
Yeah, who was that guy? What happened to him?
Yeah, what happened to him? Well, you know what? Michigan fans are going to find out what happens to him this year, Mark Rogers. So.
Yeah, that was a Musburger era Parsecan game, and then it went back to ABC the next year, the year that the Buckeyes wore the Earl headbands.
Yeah, the headband.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Well, as always, a pleasure to talk college football with Mark Rogers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate you. Have a good night.
Take care now, my friend. Bye-bye.
All right. David Knight, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that. Want everyone to know, just keep in mind that some of you know some of my story, but I'm not going to go into it now. But I've basically made the commitment to this channel, to multiple channels. We've got channels now. Listen to this. Listen up. So if you like these teams, go subscribe. If you don't like these teams, but you want to help build the channel, especially on the ones that are sub 1,000 subscribers, we've got Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Florida, the SEC channel, Miami, Clemson, Florida State, Notre Dame, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oklahoma, Texas, Oregon, USC. I think I caught them all. So please subscribe. Also, again, off the Super Chat contribution from David, just want to remind everyone that you can contribute at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Also here on the Super Chat as well. It is much, much, much appreciated. And we will continue here, and we will grow and expand and be here for umpteen years based on your individual contributions and also based on whatever revenue streams we can create in addition to that. All right. Ryan D., anytime somebody makes a statement like this, I appreciate you keeping track of the likes, but understand that it's not as though everybody has liked the live stream except for 4 people. So, Ryan, if we've got, let's see how many people in here right now. We've got 44 people. So we must have 40 likes. That doesn't mean these 44 people have produced 40 likes. We've been on for a couple hours. We've been on like 2.5 hours. So we've actually had like 500 people come through this live stream, and only 40 people have hit the like button. So don't be impressed when we've got like 60 people in the chat in the live stream and we've got like 50 likes. That's not the ratio. No, the ratio is more like 500 people watching and 40 likes. So it's well less than 10%. D-Rock Irish, I appreciate the comment there. A freaking rock star, whatever you said there, machine with the statistics. I used to be so much better. Believe me, I have forgotten more college football than I currently remember. But there's still quite a bit still up there that hasn't seeped out. But it used to be much more impressive. There are so many times when I can't come up with a player's name and I'm like, are you kidding me? I used to be able to recite, 4.9 yards per carry in 1986 and then 5.3. And I'm just like, what? That's like, I was talking to Rod Farva just a few minutes ago and Kevon Lee. Why I couldn't remember his name, I probably watched him carry the ball 50 times this year, but I couldn't remember his name. But so... we used to play a game at ESPN. When I first started at ESPN and people started talking sports with me and realized that I retained a ton of information, they used to play a game with me. I'd walk in the door when I first started at ESPN, and they would pull up baseballreference.com. If any of you are familiar, there's a college football reference and a pro football reference. It's like a fascinating site for nerds, junkies that love box scores and stats. Just that's all you get there. No frills, just stats. And what they used to do is they used to call up Major League Baseball players and they would cover up key statistics and key hints with the sticky notes, and then they would time me and see how long it would take me to just look at that player's stats. And again, like they'd cover up who they played for. I could just see their stats and the years, and they would cover up the pertinent information and time me on how long it would take me to to figure out who that player was. And I could usually do it in like 5 or 10 seconds. Yeah. But that was a time gone by. All right, folks. It was a pleasure to have all of you here. Our next live stream for sure is when? Monday at noon. Monday at noon Eastern time with Pigskin Pete, College Football Coast to Coast. Right here, College Football Coast to Coast at noon Eastern time on Monday. Now there's a possibility that if I get the itch and want to talk to all of you, or there's any kind of college football breaking news, that we'll get together for a live stream before that. Otherwise, I'm going to be hard at work, cranking out content, and hopefully generating some revenue, looking for some sponsors over the weekend. Right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Enjoy the content. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for the support, and we will see you soon.